This is how you go from where you are now to where you want to be. I'm going to show you the roadmap as a female to your dream physique, taking away all of the guesswork. And in this episode, I'm going to really break down how to actually phase your journey out. So the first thing that a lot of women struggle with is that they feel like they're just kind of staying stuck. So there's no clear plan, there's no clear phases, and they're just going to the gym, showing up and not really getting anywhere, to be honest. And this means you're in a position where you're training pretty well, you're eating pretty well, but you're not actually making that much progress. You're just spinning your wheels and ticking over. So the missing piece of the puzzle is strategic phasing. So actually breaking down your journey into clear phases. So you've got your build, you've got your cutting, and you've got your maintenance phase. Your body needs clear direction. So what you can't do is just chase all of these goals in one go. So you can't just go to the gym, eat well, and expect to lose fat, build muscle, and develop a really, really nice shape and get leaner. Like, all of these things are not going to happen in one go. You have to be super clear with actually the phase you're in, because each phase has got a really specific outcome that is going to move you forward towards that goal. And it's really important that these phases are really clearly time framed so you can actually get the progress you want. So what I'm going to do in this episode, I'm going to break down all the different phases, how long you need to spend in each phase, the purpose of each phase, and actually how long this is going to take as a female. And if you get to the end, I've got a little bonus for you where we can actually help you break down the phases specific to you, and I can provide you with a little bit more support with this. So go and head down below, there's a link to the next step if you do want to actually have more support with breaking down your journey. What I've actually done to help, and I will talk through this at the end of the video, so make sure you hang around to the end, is I am going to provide you with a roadmap which actually maps out your journey. So this is something that I will do specifically for you. We'll ask you a few questions around your goals, and then we will actually help you time frame your own journey with our own undivided roadmap to show you how long you need to spend in each phase, and actually map that out for you to give you a really clear direction. And you can get that absolutely free at the minute. So first phase we are going to break down is the building phase. So this is where you're essentially building muscle, and this is the phase that a lot of women miss. This is essentially where you're building muscle mass, you're developing your shape, and you're actually growing. So what a lot of women do, and you may have done this as well, is they will bypass this phase and they'll go straight into the fat loss phase. And the issues that tend to come up here is if you go from kind of no real structure, not really training properly, and then you go straight into dieting, you risk just kind of becoming a smaller version of yourself and not really feeling any more muscular, not really feeling like you've got the definition you want, because you haven't actually spent the time building the muscle. And then because the calories aren't built up at the start, you end up having to go really, really low with your calories, and you end up in a position where you are just over dieted, you don't actually look any leaner, your body becomes really unresponsive, and you end up just like super low energy and not really training very well because your calories are so low. And the reason that you might have done that in the past, or a lot of women will do this, is they want quick results, right? So they don't want to go into the building phase and spend maybe 4, 5, 6 months in that phase. They just want to go straight to the dieting phase and get like quick results in like 8 to 10 weeks, for example. But if you do this properly, your results in the fat loss phase will be so much better. It's just playing the long game with this. So what does this phase actually involve? It involves a slight calorie surplus, and this doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't need to go on any crazy sort of bulk, but you need to be actually fueling your body properly to get the results that you want. And I know this is quite scary for a lot of women, but if you do this in a structured way, you build your calories up nice and steadily, and you actually get your calories in a really, really good spot, you will make some really, really good progress with building muscle and getting your body in a responsive place. So the second part of that as well, and we're going to do the full next episode on how to eat properly to build muscle, so we will be breaking this down in a lot more detail. You also want to make sure that you're getting enough protein in, and you've also got regular protein servings throughout the day. So I normally recommend a minimum of 4 protein servings over the day, and making sure that you're hitting around 1 to 1.2 grams as a minimum of protein per pound of body weight. So once you've got your food and you're eating in a consistent calorie surplus, the next point is going to be actually making sure that you are following a really well structured plan and you're actually progressing your training and you're training with a very, very good intensity. So the previous videos in this series have really broken down how to train properly, how to focus on getting the most from your training. So if you haven't watched those, go back and specifically watch the videos on training. The two go hand in hand. You've got your nutrition, you've got your calorie surplus, you've got your consistent meals, and then you've also got the training. And then you've got to bear in mind that this takes time. So ideally you're looking around 4 to 6 months in this phase to get a good amount of progress. And bear in mind that building muscle as a female is quite a slow process, but you want to really give your body enough time to get some muscle on and get your calories in a really good spot. Bear in mind that throughout this phase, your weight is probably going to stay fairly similar, probably come up a little bit, but this is not a bad thing. And again, a lot of women will freak out about this, but it doesn't mean that you are, you know, getting out of shape. It doesn't mean that you are gaining body fat. You will respond so much better and you will look so much better long term if you actually spend the time building your calories up first rather than going into a fat loss phase. Just bear in mind as well, the key thing you're looking at in this phase is your strength, your training performance, and is that actually improving? Because being realistic, as a female in a building phase, you're not going to see a huge amount of progress in terms of the scale weight, in terms of the photos. This is later down the line that you actually see this when you come to diet down, and this is where a lot of women get freaked out because they will look at themselves 3 months in and think, oh, I don't look any different, I'll just go back to dieting. And you just need to ride this out and actually play the long game and properly commit yourself to the building phase. So that's the first phase, okay? And I really recommend, unless you are someone that is very overweight and you have a lot of body fat to lose, I would always recommend getting those foundations, getting some muscle on and getting your calories up nice and high, because that will lead to a much more successful cutting phase rather than diving straight into that cutting phase. So phase 2 is the cut, right? So this is where you essentially reveal what you've built in that first phase. So the purpose of this phase is to drop body fat whilst also maintaining the muscle mass that you have built in that first phase. So what does this involve? The first thing is going to be a consistent calorie deficit, so eating slightly less than what your body actually needs. Keeping your protein intake nice and high, so that doesn't need to differ from the building phase, and also maintaining all of your strength training because you want to actually preserve the muscle mass that you've built in that first phase. You can actually build in a little bit of cardio, a bit more steps, because that's going to help increase your deficit, which is going to help you lose body fat, okay? And one of the key points here is this doesn't need to be any sort of crash extreme diet. You don't need to go super low with your calories. You just want to be getting consistent fat loss every week, and the key thing here is you need to be actually be able to stick with that deficit. So you're better off going slightly high with your calories, being able to stick with it and seeing consistent fat loss, than you are going super low and not being able to actually stick with it for more than a week or two. Normally with a fat loss phase, depending on how much body fat you want to lose, I would normally say between 8 to 16 weeks is like a reasonable time to be dieting for, and obviously you want that to be consistent, including the weekends as well. So your third phase is your maintenance phase, aka your new normal, and a lot of people get confused with the maintenance phase because they think, oh, I'm not going to make any progress. You can actually make so much progress in a maintenance phase. All it means is you're not in a surplus, so you're not gaining weight, and you're not in a deficit, so you're not losing weight. It's kind of where you match your food intake with your expenditure levels and what your body actually uses on a day-to-day basis. And you can still recomp in a maintenance phase, so you can still build muscle, you can still improve your body composition. So it's still a phase where you can make a lot of progress, and that just allows you to sort of sit in a really, really nice spot where your calories aren't super low, you're also not gaining body fat, and it's a nice long-term spot to be sat. So the goal of this is essentially to hold your results, so you're not in that constant process of kind of gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. It allows you to sit in a really, really nice spot. But one thing to bear in mind with this is you may have to go through that process of cutting and building a few times to actually get the physique that you want. So a lot of people might go through a building phase, diet down and be like, okay, I'm further along, but I'm still not quite where I want to be. So then what you can do is reverse diet, come back into a building phase and do another cut. Normally for most people, it will take a few cycles to actually get the muscle mass they want, and then diet down to have the level of leanness they want, which is going to show the muscle mass. So this is why phasing out your journey is so important, because then you're really, really clear with the outcomes for each specific phase, rather than just winging it and going to the gym and eating well and hoping that you just get to where you want to be. You can be super clear with building the muscle, getting the most from that, then pulling the body fat off to get leaner, and then you go through that process, and each process then has specific goals that you are working towards in that phase that are going to lead to really clear outcomes and visual progress. So one key thing with your maintenance, obviously your calories are coming back up to maintenance, so they're just sat in a position where you're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight. You also want to make sure that you are still really pushing your training and you're still following a structured training plan. You're still doing all the key points we've mentioned before with your training, because like I said, you can still make progress, you can still build muscle in a maintenance phase. So it's a really good time to really go all in on your training as well. And your maintenance is a really good time to develop routine. You know, you can obviously be a little bit more flexible than perhaps you were in a dieting phase, but you essentially want all those good habits to still be locked in that maintenance phase. And maintenance is massively underrated because it's where long-term habits are actually built. So these are your key 3 phases, and moving through these phases with specific nutrition and training tailored to that phase and the progress that you want is what is going to move you from someone that goes to the gym and trains to someone that actually gets very, very good physique results. So I wanted to quickly touch on how to know which phase to do and how to know when to move into the next phase. So key signs that you are ready to move into a cutting phase is you have spent at least 4 to 6 months building. You are in a very good place with your calories, so your calories are like nice and high, and you've made some really, really good progress with your training. Maybe you're starting to notice that your appetite is a little bit lower, or maybe your training performance is kind of leveling off a little bit, or maybe you're just getting to the point where you feeling a little bit more uncomfortable. But just don't jump the gun with that, because you don't want to be going into a diet phase when you've spent like 1 to 2 months in a building phase. You probably are going to feel slightly more uncomfortable towards the end of a building phase, and that is normal. You will make a lot of progress from kind of persevering with that and pushing through that back end. Then you would move into a diet phase. Signs to move from a diet phase into a building phase is you have spent, you know, a good sort of 8 to 16 weeks consistently dieting, you've lost a good chunk of body fat. But on the flip side of that, if you feel like you are stalling with your fat loss progress, you know, you're not really getting any leaner, your calories are quite low, you're not really making that much progress, or maybe, you know, you've not really got that shape, maybe you're just kind of getting smaller, but you're not actually getting the shape that you actually want, that's a sign that you need to come away from fat loss and actually spend some time in a building phase. And this is where a lot of women go wrong. They keep pushing and pushing for fat loss, whereas actually the calories are low, they've not really got the muscle there, like you're just going to run yourself into the ground. The best thing you can do, although it feels scary, is come away from the fat loss and actually spend some time in a structured building phase. And then your maintenance phase, so this is a really good phase to come to. Maybe if you've got a longer fat loss phase and you want to break it in half, you could do a fat loss phase, you could run a bit of time at maintenance and then go back into a second half of a fat loss phase. Another option is a maintenance phase can be really nice to separate the phases out. So say if you've done a fat loss phase, you might come to maintenance for a bit and then transition into a building phase. So it can be a little bit of like an interim phase as well. So just wanted to talk through your transformation timeline. So an example roadmap, maybe if you are someone that you want to build a bit more muscle, you want to kind of have more definition, but you feel like you've still got a little bit of body fat to lose, maybe feeling a little bit like skinny fat and like you know you've got more in the tank. So how I would structure this for you is I would spend a good amount of time in a solid building phase, so the 4 to 6 months in a building phase. Then depending on how much body fat you've got to lose, and you're looking realistically like about a pound a week is good going with fat loss, around 8 to 16 weeks in a fat loss phase to reveal the muscle that you've built. Then you would come into a reverse diet and a maintenance phase for potentially 2 to 3 months to hold that progress. Then you can essentially repeat that process. So just to run through some realistic expectations as well, muscle takes quite a long time to build as a female, hence the time frame. Fat loss needs consistency. You can't just do it for a couple of weeks. Like you need to spend a good few weeks consistently hitting your fat loss targets, and a sustainable physique and the physique you want is probably going to take you a lot longer and a good few cycles of going through this process. You're not behind, you just need a really, really clear strategy to move you forward. You want to really commit to the phase that you're in, okay? So stop flip-flopping between phases, pick a phase, map out your journey and go all in. And if you do want support with actually mapping out your journey, if you click the link below, we'll get a few details off you and we will send you your own personalized roadmap, which is going to show you exactly what you need to do to reach your goals.